I would say, to manage your expectations, try and focus on a very small part of the service and a very controllable part of the service. One thing that I use is like the...
Has there been a project where you said, no, this is not a project for service designers?
The term design in a service designer's role sort of hinder us.
Hey guys, I'm Junaiza Niazi, author of Navigating Service Design, and joining me is the incredible Sharan Longani. Together, we're on a mission to connect you with the brightest minds practicing service design. And in today's musing, we have Adam B Cochrane, who started as a service design intern at T Labs in 2015, and today he is the senior strategic designer at Lufthansa Innovation Hub. He is a passionate facilitator and a champion for the next generation of designers. Why I say that is because he not only writes about his learnings, but also he has been advocating for service design, speaking about it at multiple conferences. And if you're a newbie or a person who's constantly reaching out to design leaders to learn from, he's always down for a one-on-one chat on ADP List. He has been an active community member at Service Design Network, conducting service design jams, and taking up more responsibility by being the director for the 2024 Service Design Global Conference in Helsinki. He has been instrumental in managing and facilitating service design drinks at Berlin. I know how hard it is because we are trying our best in India as well. He's been doing an amazing job at Berlin, a lot for us to learn from there as well. And the most fun thing is he's co-moderated the Service Design Global Conference 2023 with Adam St. John Lawrence, the author of This is Service Design Doing and Thinking. Thank you so much for joining us, Adam.
You're more than welcome. That's a very flattering introduction. I really appreciate it, and you summarized it pretty well. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Before we get into the serious topics, there was one bit that Sharan and I really wanted to know. So from when you were sharing your stage with Adam St. John Lawrence, he is known for leveraging performing arts. Was there any learning that you had from Adam that you want to share with us?
Yeah, the Adams on stage at the conference, that was quite a blast. I mean, I also, I would say, look the same way to him. He's quite a role model for me. He's an amazing improv actor and performer, but also an amazing service designer, coach, author. He is, in my eyes, a great model for what a service designer can be, and facilitator as well. He's super professional. And what professionals do really well is they make you feel really good and really comfortable. And so no matter where I took the audience or no matter what I said, he was always supportive. He always had this yes and mindset. He always looked to collaborate and go with the flow. And that was always really amazing. So you felt very comfortable because he was such an expert, so comfortable on stage, so professional, that I knew that if I missed something, he would catch it. I knew that if I went somewhere and made a joke, he would go with it. He would never let me fall flat in front of the audience, and he was always supportive. So his mindset was always make Adam feel and look really good, and that was my mindset back to him, and I think it worked really well in terms of the collaborative nature of that performance, I would say.
When you're picking up facilitation as a skill, right? When you're an industrial designer or a product designer, you have some metric to gauge if you have improved that product or improved that particular feature. So as a facilitator, what is that metric that you're constantly trying to fine tune and improve?
Yeah. Yeah, well, as a facilitator, I think the metric that I go for when it comes to design and products is if we are aligned, if we all think that and believe we're building the same thing. And if I went back to work in industrial design, I would approach it very differently now. I think what you get taught at university is that you are the industrial designer. You take the product, you go through the ideation, you yourself do all the modeling, you yourself do all the concepting, And I think the harsh reality of design in any kind of form, and I hope that all designers across the board agree, is that design essentially is a game of stakeholder management. And so for me, if you can get all your stakeholders aligned in the idea that you're all building the same thing and you're all going in the same direction, your designs will succeed much better and more quickly and more efficiently and be produced quicker. And then you can get them into the hands of the customers. Of course, as designers, our ego is we want to see our users use our product. That's like the biggest ego that we have. There's nothing better than seeing your designs out in the real world and people using them, right? And so that's what I think. So if I was to go back to this industrial design phase, I would probably approach it very differently from what I had been taught or learnt within university. And I think that's the major KPI for facilitation. So facilitation, I would say, and why I focus so strongly on it through my service design work is because, well, service design is very complicated. Designing a service and putting and getting a service out into the real world is very complicated. It's about bringing in different stakeholders, about different touch points. It's more about conducting an orchestra, let's say. That's how I see sometimes the role of a service designer. I mean, service designers wear many hats, let's not get that wrong, but one of those hats is definitely the orchestrator. And so understanding the user, how they access different touch points, the different teams that they access, the different silos they cross, that's your role sometimes as a service designer. So bringing all those stakeholders into the same room, getting them not just into the same room, but talking about the same thing, defining the same experience they want for the customer, understanding how they want to offer their service for the customer and what the customer experience should be and will be. That's why I focus so hard on facilitation. So if we walk out of the room, or we walk out of a workshop, or we walk out of a session, no matter what they be, my major KPI that I'm always looking for is if I asked all of the people that participated, will they say the same answer? Because I guarantee if you ask everyone that has something to do with your service, they will probably say they offer a very different service or doing a very different thing. Or they might not even know about each other. And so that's my key KPI for facilitation.
Interesting.
Of course, internally, yeah.
So you send out a survey towards the end of the workshop, is it, to understand, have people aligned? Because at least when I've been doing stakeholder management, I realized that what they say versus what they do, there could be few differences, because when we're doing the workshop, everyone seems very pumped up, aligned, and then they go back to their respective departments and they go back to their original thoughts. So how do you ensure that alignment that has been discussed, they maintain it? Like, is there some kind of a scale that you use or a survey that you send out after maybe a month just to check in on, are they sticking by what they say?
So for me, when I'm facilitating, and I think a good facilitation practice is, one, always be checking in. So throughout the workshop, before and after, always be checking in with the participants. Is this what you expected? Is this what you were hoping for? Are you happy with the direction this is going? Is this fulfilling what you needed to get out of it? Is this what you thought would be success? What is this aligning with what you thought success would be? And then on the second part, I don't often send out surveys. I try and reduce them as much as possible. I find that surveys is kind of the easy to go to option for feedback, and it's not very personal. But I always ask for feedback, no matter what, in many different forms. So whether it be verbal, non-verbal, whether it be tracking metrics, whether it be alignment, whether it be one-on-ones, this kind of thing, always asking for feedback. And I think to minimize this attitude behavior gap, of course, is to have multiple workshops and check-ins throughout the time. And I think this is where the second topic that I also focus on, ritual design, comes in. So thinking about the rituals that you have, not just doing a one-off workshop and, I did one and it's done, but actually developing the ways of working. So, of course, there's always this talk about the you should be building the machine that builds the machine, and the machine is here the people that will build the service for other people. So how are we making sure that we're always aligning? Are we doing a regular cadence, or is it something when something happens, or every time we want to build a new feature, do we have to do some sort of program or workshops and stuff like this? But yes, so yes and no is the answer to that one as well. But it's always great to get feedback as a facilitator. Yeah.
So, Adam, when you started, like you mentioned, your thesis as a service design project, and the way you've evolved, say today, how has your pitch as a service designer or the value that you bring to the table changed, and how has it evolved across years?
I think the biggest change that comes to my mind, first of all, is that when I was a younger service design, and as it was all new to me, and as I was also learning what service design should be, when I approached different companies and when I started in different jobs, there was obviously a lot more friction. And the friction came from where I was, this is how we should do service design. This is what good service design is. This double diamond method or 5-point design thinking system, where it was like, we should follow this, we should do this, and then we should do this, and then we should do this, and then we should do this. And this is how user research should be done. We should do this kind of thing, and then this kind of thing. And I was very fixed on doing it right. And now that I've been in service design for, 8 years or so, and my job titles have changed, and I realized that for me, it's not so much about doing it the right way according to the Bible of service design. It's more about doing it right by the organization and what the organization needs. And sometimes that will be, okay, the organization doesn't need so much XYZ method or this process, or actually we're starting from this point in the process, or we need to go back to this one. And I started to see the process as much more non-linear. I started to break down my roles and responsibilities much differently, but really according to what the organization needs and what the service experience that I wanted to bring the organization to. So I started focusing much more on the organization, the people within it, to enable better services for our customers at the end. And so I kind of break down my roles now a little bit as do. So this is my day-to-day work. So conducting user research, conducting prototyping sessions, this kind of thing. Consulting, which is enabling, and maybe I don't get enough time to do everything in the organization, but if I want to give design critiques or feedback or suggest different methods that different teams could apply. And then the other one is enablement. And I really work hard to always keep up with one-on-one learning sessions, but also group learning sessions. I go over old material. So why do we build personas? Why are they important? Why is it important to conduct user interviews in a certain way? And these three parts of my role, I would say I adapt to the organization that I'm working in.
This is actually reminding me of a very interesting learning that even I had. Initially, I used to try and draw the entire thing on a Miro, the service blueprint and the customer journey and everything. Today, I use Excel sheets because most of the stakeholders are not comfortable with Miro as a tool, and they prefer seeing most of them on Google Sheets or Excel sheets. So I've started drawing service blueprint in Excel sheets, which I never thought I would be using. The same theme, there was an excerpt from the book that I had written 2 years ago during my journey that I want to read out, and we're going to be talking about what is not service design. It says, often function heads feel threatened or defensive when they feel that another person is going to take over their responsibility. This would cause multiple roadblocks when we seek to collaborate in the future. So it's an everyday battle for service designers to generate awareness of how we contribute to different functions, but we're not replacing their functions. And around this paragraph, I wanted to ask you this. Have you had any encounters where you realize that the stakeholders' expectation from a service designer was biased towards a vertical that they were familiar with, and they were also threatened that, oh, this person is going to come in and take over my team's job or my KPI or KRA, and if you had to help them understand what your involvement is and what your role is in that particular project.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this excerpt is exactly correct. And my first reaction is, why? Like, why would they feel threatened? And understanding that deeper motivation. I think one of the things that I came to realize, and this was quite early on when I started working with the bigger corporates. So in Germany, I work with big corporate companies, and these people have had their careers there for years. I mean, even at Lufthansa, we have exactly the same thing. So their careers, it's not just their careers, but it's also their child's careers. So they've been there for 20 years, and now their kids are also working at Lufthansa. And so they've been with these companies longer. And when you come into a project often as a service designer or as a design consultant or a designer in itself, you don't come in to be necessarily embedded in the team and work with them for years and years and years. You normally come in for a fixed contract, for a certain mandate, for a certain purpose. And that is a change. You are disruptive and you are changing things. And that is a very, people don't necessarily like that. And I don't think you would like that either. Someone comes into your house and says, okay, like, you should start living differently. You can't have coffee in the morning, you should have tea, or, something like this. You would be, who does this person think they are? Like, what? You would be just as frustrated and disturbed. And I think generally people are pretty excited. I think in a lot of companies, they do see the need to improve things, and they have their own ideas as well. So there is like a multitude of reasons why people will be off-sided just by your presence. As a creative, as someone that's coming in from externally, as someone who's going to change things, as someone who says, hey, let's make things better here, and not being an expert. So, yes. So there is a lot of things to unpack here, and in terms of stakeholder management. One simple thing that you can do, and that I often do, is when I go into a project, I will always use the what, why, and how methodology to explain my things so they're clear. And then one method that I will always use is hopes and fears and next steps. So the simple thing is not making this about the project, but personally as an individual, what do they hope for the future? Maybe it's the future year or next 6 months or collaboration with you, and what do they fear will happen? And going first and setting a high level of transparency and vulnerability will also show them and tell them also to do this as well. So just getting them out in the room. So I hope for, that I can get a promotion out of this, or I fear that my job will be replaced. Okay. So if they fear that their job's going to be replaced, they are fearful for their job, but they may be under the misconception that you're trying to replace them or trying to make them redundant. Actually, no, that's not the case. They should be running the project in the future. So let's correct that. Let's have a conversation about that. And you're kind of looking for these insights. So you're kind of doing, stakeholder research, let's say. So that's one practical method, but there are different methods that I would approach also in terms of the conversation about how the project comes, about my leadership style. And this is also often the thing is, if you're in this consultancy model, and consultancies are often hired to make people redundant as well. There is a track record, there is evidence for this. If you're in this kind of consultancy agency method, is to also think about how you phrase your presence there. Are you coming with a higher authority and talking down? Are you coming with a low authority and talking up? I think chapter 13 in This is Service Design Doing, I think it's chapter 13, talks about facilitation and about levels. And so it's a really good chapter and a really good book. I highly recommend you read it, and talks about the different levels. So quite often, if I'm an external, I will come in and as a servant leader and kind of like say, hey, I'm here to help you. That's it. Like, I just want to make your jobs more efficient. Please tell me how I can do this. I will not suggest anything. I will not put anything. I'll make sure that their ideas are out first, that they're setting the direction, they're setting the mandate. And if there's misalignment and they say, well, actually, we don't need you, or we don't need any help, it's like, well, okay, I'm going to be here. I kind of got asked by this person, so kind of leveraging the seniority from other people or from their boss to say like, okay, I got asked to look into these things. What should we do about them? How can I help you improve these? What would be the most supportive? So making sure that they're leading the conversation and I'm a supporter. Instead of coming down as like, you need to do this, you must do this, you must change this. And then they're like, okay, well, that was maybe the wrong leadership style.
True, because it's very easy for a stakeholder to say, hey, I need a product designer to improve this particular feature, or I need a marketing person for pushing my sales or increasing the engagement rate. When does a stakeholder, or what does a stakeholder say, hey, I need X, so I need a service designer?
Yeah, I mean, the day that people say like, wow, I really need a service designer for this is great. I mean, that is a certain level of maturity in the organization that I would love to be a part of. But then the next level of maturity is I would love to have a service designer to do service design work and actually understand that they're doing the right thing. So I think the first level of maturity in the organization is, they don't know what service design is at all. And they would often say something like, well, our customers are really not satisfied with the service, or we have massive drop off, or, they're going to talk about more systemic things to do with, I don't know, the customer experience or different challenges they might have. It feels like our service is disjointed, or we want to do this, maybe they wouldn't even say anything about service. They would say our product sucks, or, people are giving us bad reviews. Say something like this. That would be the first level. And then you, oh, well, we as service designers could help you. And probably the second level is, someone mentioned that they would like to work with this type of person that does facilitation or helps the team align, or, that makes our service smoother or better or whatever, or we want to do something new. Innovation often is there as well. If they mention service design and they say, we need a service designer to do service design, that's like a very big luxury, I would say. But that's a little bit the thing with service design, is that many people don't know about it. But they do definitely know what a bad service is. And sometimes that's also a little bit with how we label ourselves as well. And I think that's a little bit something that we often discuss about, are you a service designer if you don't have the service design title? And I think I'm currently called a strategic designer. Before I was a product designer, but I've always been doing service design work. And this is also something that's changed. When I was younger, I really wanted to be called service designer. And then as I went on through my career, I was like, this title is actually hindering me, because people don't understand the title anyway, and they often don't want a service designer. They want someone else. They want someone to do service design work and to work in certain ways. And they might call it something else. And I'm like, fine, you call me whatever you want, and I will do this work that I would call service design. And being able to let that go and being able to, just get on with the work and do the work is very, very important.
Where do you think in a mature service design mature organization would typically a service designer fit in an org chart? Like where can a service designer really leverage their skill set and what they bring to the table?
That is a great question. I think the most correct answer and diplomatic answer is a service designer can be placed anywhere in the organization. That is a little bit our skill and our weakness. That we can really be placed anywhere. And I think I say this because it also depends on the level of maturity in seniority and experience of the service designer. It also depends on the organization. Most times in my career, I've been placed in what I would call as some sort of internal agency, internal innovation, internal or even external agency, consultancy kind of role. This is because there's so few of you and so little service designers quite often that you have to triage the type of work and requests you get and then go in and work with these people that request or that want or need to be invested in from management. For example, at Zalando, I was part of the studio for many years, and we were like an internal design agency full of different skilled people. So we had everything from motion design and brand design, business designer, creative coders, service design. So we were like, I don't know, a little bit of an A team in this kind of way. And we would go into different teams and work with different teams that were strategically relevant for Zalando. So, go look into gifting. Oh, wait, we want to focus more on sustainability. We need to do something about style advice. People are not feeling confident when they wear our clothes. So like, go in and work for this period of time and let's see what we can do and help them deal with the high ambiguity, do your magic and whatever. Now, even at Lufthansa, I'm part of the Innovation Hub. So again, some sort of innovation department before I was with agencies. And this is often where service designers end up because there's so few of them and because they normally come in for a specialized role and task within the organization. And I think the future would be, and maybe this is also what's starting to come about, is that we have service design at leadership levels. We have service design thinkers and doers embedded in so you might get head of service design or head of digital experience or head of design, this kind of roles as service designers within these roles. And these people are really looking at how do we do what Mark Stickdorn talks about with journey map operations and journey map ops. How do we really manage all of our different services? How do we make sure that we're connected? How do we make sure that we're all building the same types of services? How do we make sure that each service is interconnected, making sure that they have no dead ends or anything like this? So I think that's where we would go as service designers within organizations, but I think service designers can be placed anywhere within an organization. They're often placed in certain places just due to the environment or the maturity of the organization. But I think if you're young and looking to really get your hands on the work and really do the work, then I would always encourage people to get into the embedded role. But I'm not going. That's a privileged position to be in, I would say.
I am an in-house designer, but personally I feel like I'm also part of the design team, and I often don't get a say or even get exposed to decisions that are taken at a business level or strategy level. And when I'm not exposed to that, I can't really work around that or even think and in that direction, which is why I wanted to also unpack whether the term design in a service designer's role sort of hinder us, or is it just the Indian context? And like you mentioned, service designers get embedded in different teams in places that you've been exposed to. So I also want to understand if this is just the Indian context or if it's across, and if you've felt this and how you've maneuvered around this.
Yeah. Oof. That is a good question. Really, really enjoying these questions here, and thank you for the good questions. So, does the word design hinder service design? I think the design part of service design is pretty inherent in what we do. So, design is the intentful creation of things. I think if we were more about managing a service or doing the operations of a service, we might want to be called service operations or service manager, performance manager, product manager, this kind of role as well. And I think there is a lot of clash between some of the roles and responsibilities we have, and there is definitely overlap with these roles. But I think for me, and what I like to do in service design, I think what service design is most effective at is this creation part. So the intentful creation, the intentful thought of going through, how can we make this service better? What are the different formats of doing services? The ideation, the idea, validation, this kind of roles as well. So that's why I would say design for me is important to have in the service design title. Does it hinder us? Yes, I totally agree with this as well. Sometimes it can be, yes, when we're not just executors. You don't just tell us what service you want. We want to be part of the process. And I think this is maybe a challenge for all designers everywhere. This is also why we see like the role of UX design now coming up, or product design, or, you know, these roles and the titles have changed, not just from branding and graphic designer. The roles are saying, okay, yeah, we can do this executional, like we can do this detailed executional work, we can make things look good, but actually the problem, even if I make this look good, the product still sucks because, you know, we're not really understanding this user interaction part. Oh, well, the product still sucks because even if we get the interactions right, the experience overall is not there. So, oh, yeah, but even if we get the experience right, the actual service and what it's actually meant to be doing for people is missing. So we keep leveling up the discussion, right? We keep getting more into this, let's say, higher levels of discussion with the organization. And I think service design is one of those very high levels where we say, like, hang on, like, what is the actual service we want to offer? What are the jobs we want to enable our customers to do? How should this actually go from one step to another? How do people discover us? How do people talk about us when they leave the service? How do people deal with it when the service goes wrong? But this makes us a little bit hard to deal with, especially if you're in a new organization or service design is still relatively a new thing, to jump straight into those high-level discussions and be invited to the table. This is what we mean by this invited to the table kind of phrase. So I don't think it's an Indian problem per se. I would say it's maybe an organizational design maturity, an organizational maturity conversation, but it's also something that takes time as well. So getting higher up and having these discussions with people that make decisions or understand what service is, it takes time to get to that point. Yeah, and it also depends on what your organization sees design as, right? Do they have a very basic understanding of design? And this comes down to, again, maturity models or design maturity of the organization. If they see design as purely executional, they're also missing out on a lot of great things that design can bring to the organization. But maybe they just see it as executional. You do the colors and the interactions and that's it, right? And where we designers would say, no, you're missing the point of design here. Design is much more than that.
Has there been a project where you said, no, this is not a project for service designers?
Oof. Yeah. Yes. Plenty. Lots. I can't think of all of them. That wouldn't make sense. But I mean, let's maybe break this down a little bit. Is that there are a lot of different places where you can apply service design thinking. So the thinking of service designers, or the thinking of designers rather, let's say design thinking in a more broad sense. There, you can apply design thinking, this idea of, you know, converging and diverging, or ideating, or going out and exploring problems and focusing down. You can apply that to pretty much everything. It's a very universal process that can be applied to so many different things. But the work of a service designer and the service part of that, for me, and I would draw the line here, is that anything that doesn't involve in actually producing a service for someone is not where a service designer should be involved. So if you're not actually producing a service and creating a service for people, then service designers shouldn't be involved, because they're not going to be able to produce or make anything happen. The other thing is, I wouldn't place a service designer in a role where they literally can't change anything, or the organization doesn't want to change or can't change. This is quite often the case, but often it's arbitrary reasons, and often outside of this kind of thing. Yeah, but I think service design is a pretty open role that allows you to work in very many, and this is also the great thing about the conference, right? And this is why I love doing the conference as well, is because we get speakers that apply service design to so many different areas, and so many different roles, and so many different ways as well. And it always blows my mind. And, oh yeah, I never thought about service design in this context. Of course, like, yeah, that totally makes sense. This is a really, you know, everything from death and healthcare to I don't know, to Red Cross and service and humanitarian aid. We had a speaker from Ukraine last year. So I think I'm trying to think, maybe there's like a couple of spaces where service designers often get put, that they probably shouldn't be put as much. And I would say this is like, I might upset some people with this, but let's see. Feel free to comment and leave a like or tag me somewhere on the social media if you don't agree. But I often feel that service design gets put in a role where they are doing change management and corporate culture change management. So things like, hey, we want teams to use design thinking in their day-to-day work. Can you please do some sort of training educational program for our organization? There, for me, yes, you can work in that kind of role as a service designer, and yes, you should do also enablement, but it shouldn't be your whole entire purpose. And secondly, the other one is, which I have also done in my career, is design entertainment or workshop entertainment or innovation entertainment. If I was to go back now, I wouldn't probably try and do some things and try and convince people of some things just because it's just not worthwhile. And that's maybe also when you get more mature, you try and convince teams and people of the right things or the things that really matter. I would say to manage your expectations, try and focus on a very small part of the service and a very controllable part of the service. One thing that I use is like the Wade retrospective as well, sometimes as well, like what's in our area of influence and what's in our area of control, what can we actually impact, and what other things do we have to escalate or, thank or this kind of thing. It will come eventually. You will get invited to higher tables or higher discussions eventually. But it takes a little bit of time.